Today I'm one of the, how many people went to Craig's presentation earlier this morning as well? How fantastic was that, and creative and so on. So it's kind of, hopefully this is a kind of similar type of spirit, not quite as personal as Craig's. So it is after lunch, we're well aware of that. So we do need to have a little bit of movement during the session. There are 3 benefits of today's session. Number 1 is learn how to quickly, easily identify people's communication style. And for that, we're going to use IMA. How many people finished, or who didn't complete the IMA questionnaire that you were emailed about in advance? Shame on you. Terrible. Anyway, you don't worry. We're going to go over it very quickly, and you can make the choice, and then we'll build on that. Second one is talk about strengths and weaknesses of different types of people. And 3, increase the adoption of PMO processes. So towards the end, a real passion now is not just to always keep focusing on the people stuff, but also the hard stuff. And they're not separate, they are together. So how someone does risk management or reviews risks is different. So we write processes, procedures, put governance structures broadly in a similar way. We write it in one way because that's the way we do it, but it appeals to different people in different ways, and they do it differently. So we should take that into account. So that's what we're going to be covering during the session. This was in the program, which is people are different, and therefore how you sell, design, and deliver the services of your PMO should take this into account. We're going to actually do a little exercise on it. Do you agree or disagree? Do people agree with that statement, generally speaking? Great. Anybody disagree? So I was just going to say that would have given space because you could leave and then the others could have come. Anyway, right. So that's good. You're all in the right place. Always good to hear. I'm not going to be covering this side of it, and I'm not going to go on much about what I do. But recently, the 2 of the companies I've been working for, even though my bent is towards people leadership development, I've actually been doing capability development, so putting in place project management handbooks, structure, codes of practice, right through to portfolio management, crude tools in businesses. So we've had to think about all of this stuff, and that's not what I'm going to be covering because there's lots of other great speakers today. But so there's the hard side of it, which you've got to do, but there's also the fact that it's the way that you do it and make sure that people are bought into it. So the structure of today is, or this session here, we're going to start with sorry, I've just realised I was playing with another version of the build, so it's slightly different. But anyway, not to worry. Start with about soft skills and talk about that, why they're important. Then we're going to use this IMA model. If you understand yourself, you're better placed to understand relationships, how to work with people, a little bit in teams, a little bit on culture as well. And I don't think we're going to have time to deal with national culture, unfortunately, but there's layers of the onion that when I'm working with people, you work in those layers. Does anybody know what flag that is in the top left? No, I just made it up. Just always curious if people go, yes, that's Sweden, or no, it's made it up. So then we're going to do something, we'll do organizational culture, might touch on cognitive biases, definitely talk about the impact on project management in doing it, might touch on conflict, might touch a bit in leadership, and it's going to be based on a series of personal case studies. I'm going to try and bring out examples to try and make it as real as possible, a dash of theory and a mention of the book, which I was involved in last year, delivering. So we know that the people side of things is important. This is from a few weeks ago in the Sunday Times, Raconteur, the supplement, and the people side was very strong there. There was teams conversation, there was stuff about mindset, there was PMI's model, the triangle about leadership. So the people side is rising in importance, and I think people are now starting to understand, well, what does it actually mean? What do you do about it? So hopefully in my own humble way today, I'll try and give you a bit of an insight. I give you some tools and things you can actually go away and use. So where's some of the thinking captured? I mentioned about the book. It's a book, came out, it's on the stand downstairs. If you're interested in it, you'll be glad to hear none of them are signed, so they haven't been spoiled. If you're interested, but I'll pick up in various bits and pieces as we go through. My co-author unfortunately can't be here today, but this is what we wrote a book last year in project leadership. So without much ado, I'm going to dive into talking about this IMA profile, because that will give us the basis to then be having the broad conversation about what the impact of it has on trying to get buy-in to a PMO, trying to work more effectively as a team, how to ensure that it fits more with your culture. So we need to go through this little bit of theory initially, and then we'll build on that, okay? So for those of you who didn't complete the IMA profile, when you go through this, just make a choice as to which quadrant you see yourself in, and then we can work on it from there, okay? So, IMA, it's a simple tool. How many people have completed things? I mean, I guess everyone there, Myers-Briggs? Yeah, it's a 16, this is a 4-quadrant model, slightly different approach. So it says I'm a high yellow, I'll tell you in a moment what that means. The questionnaire is free, and some of the stuff that when you do it now, did you see when you completed it, there was a slider that came across once you came to the screen, and it should offer a free PDF, so you can go in and pull a PDF off that gives you some insight about it. If you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about, this slider, it doesn't work in my PC either for some reason, but there is supposedly a slider come across and say, hey, here's a free PDF. So I'm going to go through 2 different axes. So all of these models that try and get a distinction between people, broadly speaking, work in a couple of axes. And it usually goes, you're either at one end of the axis or the other. And this model's simple. It's only 10 questions. It's not going to tell you what colour underpants you're going to wear in 3 days. Got to be realistic about it. It gives you a bit of an insight, but it puts you in either a kind of 0 or 1 situation. Yeah? And from those 10 questions, you get a profile, and it puts you in one end or the other of two axes, which gives you the 4 quadrants. I don't need to explain anymore. PMO people, I'm sure you've got that. Right, so I'm going to go through. So the first axis is openness. So it's a readiness and willingness to share, show feelings, enter into relationships, accept others when they share and show feelings. So just a check, can you read that at the back? Right, yeah, great. Okay, so openness, that's the first axis. So the 2 ends of the spectrum we have, and again, I'll simplify this: thinking left brain and thinking right brain. It is a crude oversimplification now. I've even had the pleasure last week of talking at a neuroleadership conference. Neuropsychology is making us realize it's not left brain and right brain and so on, but it's a nice simple distinction. So we've got left brain over here. Orientations typically more towards task, tend to be more self-contained, guarded in how they open up to people and share. Over in this side here, more right brain orientations towards relationships tend to be quite open about being open. So they will share, like me saying at the beginning about the fact about insecurity, and if there'd only been 4 of you in the audience, of course I'd have done just as good a job, but my bottom lip internally would have been wobbling because it's like nobody loves me. But that's, so there's no guesses as to where I sit, so I'm firmly over here. And they tend to wear their heart on their sleeves, read like an open book, share things about themselves. And at this end, don't readily share and show their feelings. By the way, there is no good and bad in this. It is just a distinction. So it doesn't really matter where you sit. And as we'll come to see, it doesn't really matter about how you lead or how you run a team or whatever. Everyone can do it, any of the quadrants, any of the types of people. It's just you would do it in a different way. They like to keep a mental and physical distance, and they make decisions based on logic. So for example, somebody right over here meeting somebody right over there, if you're going up and going, come on, man hug, never met you before, and it's, sorry, I just came in a big argument with my partner, just all sorts of stuff, and I'm not feeling great anyway. But what was it we were here to talk about? The other person on the other end is going, I don't know why you've told me all of that. That just feels a bit inappropriate. The whole man hug thing, why? So it's not like, all of a sudden you've got a distinction. So that impacts how you communicate, what you're going to communicate. So that's the first distinction. Next distinction is a vertical axis. I was going to say, where should I point this, the pointer? Oh, is it you? Right, great, thanks you. So I was doing this earlier, I didn't know where to point it in case I blind somebody if it's got a laser pointer. So assertiveness, so the next axis is the assertiveness, a person's need to move forward, to assert themselves. It's not quite the same as assertiveness in the Myers-Briggs sense. The way somebody deals with the degree of directness, forcefulness, expression of thought. So again, the axis is non-assertive at the top, tend to be, now I'm using the word slow and fast, slow to assert, not slow as in minded, slow, non-assertive, and fast as assertive. And the two ends here, we have someone at the top end there tend to move at a slower pace, literally physically move at a slower pace often, and will take longer to do things, more considered in their approach, compliant, cooperative, supportive, soft-spoken. And down here, move at a faster pace, outspoken, dominant, talkative. Again, doesn't take a genius to work out which quadrant I'm or which end of the spectrum I'm in. So if you put the two of them together, the theory is nearly over, so it's quick. You end up with the I'm a model. So what we have is, I'll work backwards. So we end up with the model, which is the level of assertion and the level of focus on being open-guarded, and you end up with 4 colors. So you've got your high green, blue, red, and yellow. Now, the reason for high is that it is saying you are not green. It's just saying that your preference is, there's a high preference. Pardon me. There were very good helpings at lunch. Did people think that? Normally you get there and it's like, that's at the starter. So apologies, that was a lovely lunch. So 4 different colors. So we've got, so can I just ask the people who didn't complete the IMA questionnaire, would they be able to choose one of those colors now and go, given what you've said, I'd put myself, most occasions, in that quadrant, yeah? Okay, great. So, some of the issues. If you are working or communicating with or member of a team and your one axis is different, there's some potential for some issues about communication. If your 2 axes different, the potential is greater for misunderstandings, not working, and so on. So let's just imagine. So let's just think about the different colours briefly. So what would say high green, working up here, who's non-assertive, typically self-contained, focus on task. If they were working with a high yellow, what might some of the issues be between the high green and the high yellow working together? Don't feel shy. No, don't be shy. Just.
The phrase "Would you ever shut up?" comes into my mind.
Would you ever shut up? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The green would be like this. No, that's the other way around. Right. So
can't you make a decision? Can't you make a decision?
The other way around is can't you make a decision? I've imparted all of this knowledge. Why can't you make a decision? One little dynamic. Yeah. And other dynamics. What about the style? Let's get right into the hard side of PMO, mechanics and process and so on. Who's likely the person that's going to go off and develop the processes, systems and tools? Green. To what level of detail will they typically produce it? Nth degree, spoken lightly, but somebody who isn't a high green?
Depends what mood I'm in.
It depends what mood, right. But the high yellow, of course, may go, oh. Now, if you've got a high yellow version of the processes, well, you would get them. It might not be quite when you thought you were going to get them. And it would likely be quite fast and furious and the basic going, the other stuff is just about to come in the detail, but it might never come. Now, I'm a high yellow, I can be critical, but that's kind of the way that it might go with a high yellow. So that's one dynamic. So what, and the other one about the high red, trying to work or communicate with the high blue. What are some of the dynamics that might come up there? So somebody very assertive and but still relatively, so that they're quite, they're task orientated, tend to be a bit guarded, but they're quite assertive versus somebody who is just non-assertive and very much about the relationship.
It'll be a case of, this is what you're going to do, get on with it. And the other person's thinking, what am I going to do exactly? Where's the details? What do they actually want me to do?
Yeah. So there's likely a need for, the red will set direction, not necessarily good at detail. The blue will be accepting of it because it's partly the nature to accept and to follow, but that's not necessarily positive way. And you can get into, unhealthy, every one of these relationships, you can get into unhealthy dynamics, as you can imagine. Yeah. So, as we know, somebody said, well, it depends what mood I'm in the morning, so you end up as a bit of a blend. And because, as I say, it's only 10 questions, you're only really going to get a broad snapshot, but we tend to find it useful. So IMA, I'm going to just describe about IMA, the use of it. Well, the term is, the first part of IMA is to identify. So if you know what your communication or engagement style is, their IMA colour, and again, if you use Myers-Briggs or any other tool, 16PF, Strengths Deployment Inventory, any of these, it gives you an insight about your own style. And it is an interesting thing. I remember in my career where somebody told me, they said, oh, here's your communication engagement style. And I thought, I didn't even know I had one, because I just do what you do. And then somebody said, well, it's actually in that box there, in that box. Oh, right. So I didn't, then you start thinking, well, if I've got one, that must mean somebody else has got one. And then you start to get the distinctions. And you can do something about it, because if they've got a different way of doing it from you, you've got a language. How many of you have been in discussions of working with colleagues, whatever, where you're going, they are a pain, aren't they, to work with, and you go, oh, yeah. And you never go any further than that. And it's like, well, what can you do with the fact they're a bit of a pain? Oh, God, they're always on it, oh, like that. What the hell does that mean? At least with these tools, it gives you, right, that's why we might be, the two of us or the three of us, thinking that, because we're different from that person. So that's the identify. How do you do it? Well, you could guess. Well, I have a guess as to what they are. You could speak to or communicate with them. You could ask them for their preference. Why not? People say, we can't ask senior manager. Why not? Say, how would you? So Garrett, if you don't mind me, I'm going to go and meet with Garrett, who is the finance director. I might just say, look, I'm coming to meet with you next week. Just wanted 5 minutes of your time. How is it best to communicate with you? What level of detail do you want? How would you like me to do the meeting? Why on earth would you not? Ask them to do the IMA. Why not again? And ask somebody who knows them to give them opinions. There's different ways you can do the IMA. Then you modify your approach and style only if you want to get an outcome. If you want to just keep going at the problem the same way you always have, if it always gets a positive outcome with the person, then don't change it. If it doesn't, then you need to modify something about what you do. And then, of course, when you actually do it, you then need to adapt it because it didn't work. So you go into the meeting going, I'm completely prepared for Garrett. It's all going to be about detail. And that morning, you've woken up in a completely different mood, and you just want to go for a coffee and have a bit of a chat and a walk around the grounds of the building. And you're going, well, I've prepared 6 inches of paperwork, and because you need to adapt then going, right, okay, I'm going to need to go for the top 3 things and just talk around them, even though I thought you were going to go for that. You don't know, so you need to be a bit careful with any of these tools. So that's the process and so on that you go through. So the core strengths of the different colours, the blue, certain ideas are carried out, be stability to the group. Green, the project is done well. Red, that they'll focus on results and insist. And yellow, generate, promote ideas. The words at the bottom, I always think it's slightly demeaning, but James, who come up with it, says have fun. But there again, I know every one of the high yellows I work with, you've always got to have a humorous start to a conversation or an end to it. And usually there's a comical element to what we're doing. So yeah, I guess that is. So, and some strengths about these people as well. Blues tend to be great collaborators. Green, great process definition. Has this got a pointer? Yeah. Red's very much about the drive for delivery. Yellow's about energy and ideas. By the way, it doesn't mean to say that they drive and delivery. It could be in the wrong direction. So there's no level of quality built into this. I could be the best, most energetic ideas person, and every one of my ideas is rubbish. So there is a balance here to in all of this. So how do you get the best out of this session details? That is some detail about each of the different colours, the blue, the green, the red and the yellow. I'll just give you a minute just to scan your eyes through it. Then we're going to do an exercise. Again, I realise this is all kind of fast tracking it, but I've found that people usually are able to get this. It's a nice simple model, and then actually do an exercise based on it. And for yourselves sitting there, you'll just have to get a mirror up or something to see it. But you can see, Blues, warm supporters, good planners. Greens, systematic, task-orientated, structured, wanting structure, repeatability. Reds, goal-orientated, more fast-paced, want to see results, benefits they'd be very interested in. And yellows, high energy, making sure that people are moving forward and there's energy around, back to what Craig was talking about earlier. So we're going to talk about an exercise. I'm going to split you in the room in a highly scientific manner into broadly each of the different colours. So we're going to have, let's just think about, this is what you get for not preparing this quite in advance. Right, so what I'll do is I'm going to split the room into red, green, blue and yellow. So we'll do kind of red to here, green, then kind of blue, and then yellow. And the stakeholder that I'm going to describe is that colour. So you are whatever the colour is that you are, but the stakeholder that I'm going to explain to you about and give you the scenario for is this colour, and you're going to be trying to get the best relationship with them and get a result, okay? So I'll just explain. What is it you can actually adapt? So you're going to meet with this person, or not, and you're going to send them something or not. So this is what I want you to think about. How do you best engage with that person? So what you send them, what you do, what level of detail, at what stage, where you do it, formal, informal, their office, your office, how you do it, when you do it, who is best, is it you that does it, is it someone else that does it, why, what do you lead with? Do you focus on the why I'm here to meet you, why this decision's important, or do you not? People would rather have the detail, then they'll worry about the why later. So everyone thinks in a different way. So the scenario is, here we are. The exercise, you've been asked to provide information, and I don't want to be more prescriptive than that, to an important internal client of your PMO on the value that you, as a function, are adding in the organization, okay? You know from working with them in the past that they have a colour style. How would you approach and deal with the request for that information? Okay, so each of you has 4 different colours. Now I'll put up here, if you can read that, I'm not, at the back it's pushing it, I think, it's kind of 2/3 of the room, reasonable eyesight. So this is just something to refer to with each of the different colours. That's, apologies, it's not come out quite clearly. That's the quadrant model up above. So you get non-assertive, assertive, task, self-contained, open, and each of the 4 colours there in that model. So I'm asking you to think about one colour, whatever colour you are, and I'll just do it then, and I would suggest in groups of 3 or 4 or 2, I really don't care. I'll only have a chance to choose a couple of the groups so that we can move on to the next exercise, okay? So if you can spend just a few minutes thinking about the things based on that there, the what you could change, where, how, when, who, why, if you were engaging with that particular colour to achieve this, to provide this information. The subtext being they're maybe not very happy or they've got a bit of a concern. So that's the kind of subtext. There's a bit of a concern there. The question is, how do you address their concern? So it's about how you do it. It's not, I don't need the detail about what your PMO is actually doing. It's about how you approach this, how you communicate with them. Is that clear? Is that exercise clear? I ran it by my wife last night about 10 o'clock. She thought that makes sense, but lately she just wanted me to shut up at that point. So, okay, I'll give you a few minutes now to have that conversation, then we'll get some feedback. So ladies, you might have a slight disadvantage not being able to see. We've only got time just to pick maybe 2 things. So if I choose you, make sure you come out with a really good one that fits the theory, okay? Or we'll just cut it from the video. Okay, so maybe someone from the red, who would like to say, how would you approach the red with this information to get the best results? Oh.
Hi there. We said that we would probably write a 1-page discussion paper and then if possible, try and sit down. I send it out beforehand to the person, then try and get 5 minutes at a time to take them through it.
Great. Formal, informal?
Formal.
Formal, yeah.
Short, brief, yeah.
So the slight danger in that is, because there's nothing straightforward in life, so that's the kind of modify to fit them. The adapt could be that they go, that's rubbish. Where's the detail? You go, no, but you're a higher ed. You don't need it. You'll give us 48 hours. No, I want it. So you need to, sometimes you almost need to do the same amount of work and things and stuff, but then it's the way you position it, because they could just have got outside of the bed, out of bed that morning and want all the detail. So you just need to be a little bit cautious.
Your back pocket information.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, so now we'll go off to the separate end of the quadrant and ask about the blue. So what about a blue? Anybody like to hazard a guess as to... There's no right answer, by the way, so it's... Oh, resident... Okay. Go on, resident blue. Of course, blues love talking and being... Do you want to do it? Or? Yeah, thank you. If you hold it right up, pop star like. Yep.
I'd have like a one-to-one meeting, be very open, explain the answer to the problem, why, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and be understanding of that person's feelings.
So you've used words like feelings, for example. What is it that they feel? Are they actually frustrated? They'll want to share with you that they may be, and they'll be quite open in doing that as well. Yep. So what about what would you lead with? So what would you, just thinking about, if you were going with a red, what would you want to come up with from a content point of view of what you say? What is it you'd want to lead with, say for the high reds? Oh, so let's do the high blue, sorry. So information about your PMO and the value it's adding. Do you start with the hard numbers? What do you start with? So.
It's more the hearts and minds and the benefits, and making that talk to that person about what it can bring to them. So understanding and getting them involved. So looking at it from sort of the end backwards and looking at the benefits for that individual, and then getting their view in it and getting them involved from the start.
Yeah.
And then having the figures there. Blues tend to like details, so having the figures there at the ready, but starting with more of the softer stuff and working out what exactly they want.
So saying things like, we've found that the capability of the community is growing. People are happy. The blue may be senior, may still be pushed with KPIs and performance, but ultimately they're a human being. So that's what's important to them as a human being. So yeah. Now the reds, again, sorry for missing two colours, but the reds, you may want to say that, but you would want to start possibly with performance information. This is what it is that we have achieved. This is what's been from it. This is what the PMO is doing for our margin, etc., etc. And then, of course, you would come on to that. And then you would do the green bit about how well repeatability of the processes and how we're not repeating and reworking stuff, and we've got the data to show it. And then the yellow going, God, everyone's just energized. It's fantastic. New ideas coming out. So you need all that thinking. It's just when you share it. Yeah. Okay, so that's us done. Thank you. So that's talked about the IMA and the positioning of it. What I'm now going to ask you is, we did do, of course, a survey. He says, the results of the survey. I'll just keep pressing. Problem is that catches up and then jumps ahead about 10. Oh! Right, it's up. Not worry about that. Right, how was the data collected? PMO conference, there's a LinkedIn post I put out. It was only those, so how did it narrow down? Well, it was only those that saw it. It was only those that chose to complete it. So it's a pretty self-selecting group, of course. My minor level of interpretation, because not everyone put PMO or PMO conference. Surprised everyone, come on, you're up. And then there was 136 completions by 9:15 last night. So drum roll, see that was a drum that came in and everything was lovely. Surprised, what do you think the results would be? What thought? So that's the breakdown of it. Is anybody surprised by that? Breakdown of typical PMO? If you were a non-PMO person and you were a project manager, what might you think the PMO structure would be? Yeah, so I would say more towards the green quadrant. I was personally surprised. I know some people would be surprised. Oh God, it's going to sound, this is meant to be meant really humorously. You know, there are yellows in a PMO. It does harm. That's ba-boom, but you are a PMO audience, it's a pretty rubbish joke. I'll go into in a minute and say bad things about quantity surveyors just to balance it out. But that is a slightly different. So that's the quadrant, personally, I was quite surprised about. But it just goes to show that I think PMO, if you did this 5 or 10 years ago, I don't think there would have been the same cut. I think PMOs are changing. What's been the expectation of what they do and the status of them is changing. So I think it is that's why it's more of a balanced view than I thought it would be. And I've got some other bits of analysis, but I don't have time to go through it now, but I just found it fascinating when you actually saw it. So what are your thoughts around that?
I think the yellows are self-selecting people who respond to questionnaires because they're fun.
High yellows, great, tend to respond to questionnaires because they like doing any. Honestly, I am such a tart for white papers and anything like that. Oh, it's a white paper. I must spend my 1 minute filling in. Yeah, because there's a bit of information there. It'd be lovely. Yes, I tend to. Maybe that's again for high yellows. I've never done one in my life. Why not? But yes, what about you think the makeup of your PMO function? So now getting it back to your world and your PMO. Now that you've had days to think about it.
Well, I know what ours is. There's only 2 of us in it.
That narrows it down.
One of us is blue and one of us is red.
Right, and do you work well together?
Not necessarily.
Right.
But we might do in the future.
And is this other person here?
No.
Oh, well, that's fine. Spill the dirt. Okay, so there is again, I'm sure you've reflected. This is good because it gives you at least a language to go, we're 2 different. And if you can value each other because of the strengths you bring, that's, of course, the great thing about all of this, if you can see those strengths. So what about somebody, is anybody in a PMO? Sorry.
There's 4 of us now in our PMO, and we're one of each. And I actually think that's what makes our team work really well, because we understand the complexities of project managers that we work with in different ways.
So that's, if you didn't hear, that was 1 of each colour. Sounds like a recipe for success or disaster, but that's fantastic. And that so it allows you to perceive and work with different types of people. So do you wheel out the right person to deal with the right project manager?
Not always.
No, I can't, yeah.
No, but yeah, we try to modify how we communicate with different PMs in different ways.
So you might have almost like 4 flavours. I know you can't have 4 levels of process and tools and systems, but people will be better at communicating, engaging with different people. Yeah, great, okay. So there is, because this tool is free, feel free to use it in exactly this way. I know this is a hugely complex template that I've created in PowerPoint, but I'm sure given a few days you could replicate something similar. Just to have a conversation around. So that's us talked about the broader you as a community. What about teams themselves? And apologies for those at the back, you may not be able to read some of this. It's likely not a bad thing you can't read what I'm about to show. Put aside all the issues you've got with the individual and the different communication styles. You've got all of this going on in teams as well. I did do this in an organisation. I used this slide a lot and I actually said it was quite a complex organisation, and I said it was actually a mapping of stuff I'd done through all the capability interviews, and somebody actually said, seriously? And I went, no. I was like, no, I don't think my questionnaire covers any of that. Are you sleeping with somebody? Are you, no. So, no, it's humorous, but it does get the point across. The complexity, even if you just take 1 layer of we communicate differently, there are so many different layers of complexity going on. To make teams work, it's a miracle in many ways that it works. So, these issues typically are not dealt with, they're not talked about. If that was a PMO, whether it's a board or PMO group, you don't typically do it. If you as a PMO know the fact that you're all different, And there are if you do maybe talk about the tensions, some people are good at this, some are not, some spend too much time doing that, then that is a big jump on from where most people are, because they don't talk about the elephant in the room. And honestly, I was so happy when I found that photograph. I don't think it is a photograph, by the way. I'm pretty sure it's a Photoshop. Could be wrong. Just to give you an idea about some of the impact, I'm going to go through this quickly because I'm conscious, is that was the board of a construction company. And what's the implication of it? They made pretty awful decisions when it came to anything to do with reasoned, balanced views of the world. So they went off and created effectively a PMO structure and processes and mapped how they worked as an organisation. Sounds good, except every department did it completely differently in a different format and a different structure, because they'd all torn off and got on with it. And the only lone blue, the finance director, very quietly spoken chap. He had pointed out, he was a board member, he even actually owned 25% of the company, but he didn't make the point of going, this is a stupid way of going about it, because the Reds went shooting off. So it does happen, this is what can happen. You need to be very, sorry, the red and the blue and the green, they weren't listened to. Happens. I know it's hard for you to believe, Reds, that you're not giving people the opportunity, but it does happen, it has been recorded in history. So we're going to talk now, and this is a client we're working with now, and it's a working group, and that's the structure of the working group, and that we've put in effectively like a portfolio management function. It's a bit grand, it's only 250 people, but with the 2 people that have been recruited, but not because they completed an item that came out as a green or blue, but that is it. Of course, these people are creative and work exceptionally well, do great client work, just don't deliver on schedule and on budget. And thank God they don't have too many clients who make a big issue of it. But these 2 people came in, and that's who I'm working with now. We've got the last of the big briefing sessions to all the project leads, and that's the structure of the working group that we had. Now, just let's talk about the culture. So let's go up. Remember that onion diagram, one-to-one, teams and so on. If you go up to the culture level now, how's everyone feeling, by the way? We've got 10 minutes left to go. I'm conscious the air and so on. I'm finding it stuffy, and I'm the one standing talking. So well done for those who are not nodding. But if you think about the culture, the level of, and this is a model from the book, simplified version of it, but if you've got this kind of level of process definition in your organization, level of centralization, we created this model to try and make it as simple from a project point of view, you can have a conversation. And where we realized the 2 companies we're working with at the moment, they were down in there, their current as-is position. It's all relationships based. Information, where do I get it from? Excel, which Excel worksheet are you going to send to me? And I'm going to send to you, and so on and all this, and they know how to do it. And the issue was we were not trying to get them to that top right corner, simply up to there. But they're a fantastic organization. We helped them develop this life cycle and structure. So that nice, very pretty, lovely view of the world, that was their move. It's got a huge amount of detail below it as well, but that's about the only level we've gone to at the moment of putting a life cycle for the way they do their projects. Right back to Chrissy's initial talk today, you can't boil everything and do everything. We've started at that level there, and it's moving them from this level to here, because ultimately their culture is just not ready for it. And they're in the creative industries world as well. How many people are from the creative industries world? Marketing, branding. Isn't that surprising? Not surprising, but you wouldn't imagine people to come from that world have PMOs and structures. I wonder how many fashion brands have got. Maybe Craig should be for those who went to Craig, should be working at Gucci now, putting a portfolio management office in. That would be an interesting one, I'm sure. So let's just jump on this. Now I want to get to, where the teams want to achieve. Now, that was actually, so I just want to flick on. That was work we did very recently, at the end of last year, with a very large international transport design team. We were doing 1/4 of a big rail project, rolling up the car. And this was the design, and it was actually bringing a little bit of culture into it. That was the lead British designer, and they had PMO people in here. they had the European designer, and overall that was the profile. Now that had an impact on the way they were running the project and they were setting up. You do your profile, okay, if it's only maybe 2 of you, or if you're only 1, maybe it makes it a bit easier to reflect and think, how is that impacting the way that I work? So what I want to do, we'll miss that one out. Right, we'll miss that out as well. We'll miss out that. Cognitive biases, them they read out and stuff like that. Bent Flyberg, major projects, side, and so on. It's really called lying, but it gives a kind of scientific and base level to it. It's just unfortunately making executives feel very uncomfortable, or projects people feel uncomfortable, because they say once you've pointed out your cognitive biases, if you do it again, that's called lying. But anyway, I'm kind of jumping over it, but it is hugely important. If you know even these different IMA colours give you a bit of an insight into what your biases might be towards things. So I wanted to, talk about, oh goodness, here we go again. Right. Right, the impact and adoption of processes. I started the talk, and I'm very conscious I don't have very long now to finish off. In fact, 6 minutes and 23 seconds. How does this stuff then impact the hard side? So in all the codes of practice handbooks that we've done recently with clients, we've tried to build IMA in. So it's not to give you 4 different project management handbooks or portfolio management handbooks, but we've said, just be aware everyone's going to view it and do it differently. So if you think each of those, if that's what you would typically say, oh, no, that's not the slide I was expecting. Sorry, there is here we are. Right, if you're managing risk, each of those, if that's what a typical risk cycle will look like, please don't shoot me down saying, oh, you're missing a step there. If that's kind of how risk management typically works, each of those colours does it differently. They perceive different risks. They would do risk management differently. They would involve people in risk differently. So how might a high yellow do risk management?
He doesn't.
Oh, come on, be positive. Just yes, okay. If they're forced to, and somebody goes, "Have you actually done it?" They're going, "Yes, of course I have." What's a high yellow approach to doing risk management?
Keep it in head, not necessarily documenting on, just kind of think about the big risks. And
Think about it potentially. You might get forced to capture it, of course.
yeah.
But do you do it in your own?
You might do a workshop.
Workshop. Who's high yellow in the room? Keep your hand up if you like workshops. Yeah, I see high yellows, workshop junkies. Yes, you do it with workshops. And you do it and you capture it and you just pray to God that there's a high blue or a high green in the room who are going to capture it for you. Or you roll it all up and then a week later you go, oh, bloody hell, I've got to capture it at some point. Write it down. And the other one, how might a high green tackle risk management?
Are all my fields completed?
All my fields completed.
I have a risk without an action. I have an action without an owner. I have an owner without a date.
Yeah, the fields are missing structure. But you've got fields. In fact, that means you've got a tool. You've got structure around it. In fact, you're likely the one who's put the structure in place. So what can happen is if you get a high green who puts the processes in place, there is at least one quadrant or 2 quadrants of a difference between trying to get the high yellow to do it. So there's where what we've done is with the handbooks and so on is put in place minimum standards. And it's typically for the high yellows and the high reds. Because the high green and blue will either create it, criticize it because it's not structured and repeatable enough. Blue will just tend to do it well. And the reds will say, of course we've got to do it and be very vociferous, but then not do it. And the yellows will kind of do that and have a bit of fun around it as well and do a workshop to confuse it all as if there's loads of progress being made in it. But it is different. Now, you could do exactly the same thing with planning. This is risk. You could do exactly the same thing with multiple aspects. It was one of the reasons I used to, how many people are involved with the APM, Association for Project Management? So I had the pleasure of chairing their People SIG for 10 years. So now I chair a PMI group. But the APM group, and it's no criticism of the APM, but somebody come up to one of the board members come up to me and went, do you know what? I've been thinking about it. I think the people side of projects is quite important. And I went, do you know, it's a very good point. And the next week I resigned. and found, I thought, Jesus God, after 10 years of banging a drum. So why do I say that? At the moment, and I think that, I was going to say revolution's too strong a word, this people stuff, you tend to go off and get people skills over here. How many people have been in people skills courses? Nearly, I guess, nearly everyone in some shape or form. How many people have been in a hard projecty program, portfolio, PMO type courses? How many of them have completely collapsed the two together? That's now whether I'm right or wrong, that's my issue. That's the stuff we do, and it tends to frustrate people. If we do project management training, I have to put this in. Because there's no point, you can get the project management stuff, go onto YouTube or buy a book. Okay, I'm demeaning now Prince 2, and I know Andy Murray and all this, but you can kind of get the mechanics of it. What you can't get is how to do it and get people to adopt it and use it, and so on. So he says, flicking through a typical yellow, never. I did the RICS's construction conference and the leadership conference last week, and I was bang on. It must have been the environment I was in. But I'm not a little behind. The only objective I haven't covered was around, and this is, by the way, complete. It's going to be in the model, in the slides, a model for the use of different types and shapes of projects. Built that into every one of the recent client assignments. The people love it because it's a simple model that gives you a diamond shape, and then you can talk about the diamond and the shape of the project and the type of project leader and the level of governance you need to manage that type of project. I'm conscious that's a very, if anybody's more interested, speak to me after this. It absolutely goes down a bomb, and it's bloody useful. Education, there's lots of things you can be doing beyond it, and there's lots of stuff you can be doing around programs to run for PMOs and development people and so on. Again, it's all in the book, and in fact, a lot of it is actually online. If you go to what was Gower's online resource called GPM First, which I think is still linked off the new website, and it links you through. Most of this stuff is available free of charge, because trust me, the commissioning a book, I'm not trying to get you to buy a copy of the book. This is the key messages to take away. We'll see the world differently. These will be on all the slides when they come out. I think everything's been videoed. All the slide material has been made available. And if you wanted a little bit of inspiration to finish on about Projects World, and this is an old book now, but the book that was written by Tim Smith about the Eden Project, and it was absolutely amazing, because he talked about quantity surveyors and project managers and PMOs and so on, because he just wanted to get the Eden Project built, but he needed that to get the £75 million and run it, and it's absolutely inspiring, and especially if you like gardening and plants. So thank you very much, and there's a bit about the thing for the book, so thank you very much.